Okay, folks, continuing in the formation check, Bobo here at 3's End. Man, I'm on a roll now. Okay, so we've completed the area work. Usually the completion of the area work was determined by a bingo fuel. Now, bingo to us at that time meant that's the amount of fuel you needed for the recovery, plus to have whatever gas you needed for weather minimums. So 600 pounds was our min fuel in the T-38. So in student training, I didn't like to land with much more than 800 pounds. So you take 800 pounds and then you gave yourself gas for the recovery, usually 400 to 500 pounds. That took you up to 1,300 pounds. So you threw in a couple more 100 pounds. So 1,500 pounds of fuel remaining would be usually a typical bingo. I remember Jack one time was briefing a two-ship, and we had a lot of work we needed to do. And Jack looks over, during the brief, he says, all right. He says, today you need to really pay attention because this is a no-shit bingo of 1,200 pounds. 1,200 pounds. That is a no-shit bingo. So anyway, and the first airplane that hit bingo would call it out. Now, if lead hit bingo, there's no need to call it out. To call for the recovery. I mean, it's obvious that the reason he's calling recovery is because he's bingo fuel. Okay. Usually it wasn't a problem. It wasn't an issue. But I remember down at Pitt one day, Rat was up flying with a student, and we tried to instill common sense in these guys. Hey, if lead hits bingo, he's going to call for the recovery. He's not going to say Reno 17 lead is bingo. And I've seen some hellacious philosophical arguments over this subject. And there is no wrong answer. If you want to call bingo as lead, you go right ahead. The electricity's paid for. But I just thought it was kind of superfluous. If I'm down to bingo fuel, call for recovery, go home. All right, so Rat's at PIT. He's sitting in the front seat of this airplane playing Lieutenant Schmuckenfuss, UPT student, and the lieutenant in the back is just instructing his little heart out. So anyway, he's sitting there and on the wing, and I'll be honest, candid, Rat was waiting for this. So lead, they're out in the area there, and lead calls, Reno 17 lead is bingo. And Rat says, 2 copies, go channel 4, descent check. All in one sentence. This guy, what in the hell just happened? But Rat was so smooth at it, and his student who was playing the IP in the back seat, it blindsided him. But Rat says, Reno 172 copies, go channel 4, descent check. And this moron in the lead aircraft says, lead, I didn't know what else to say. So then they go to channel 4 and for recovery, and Rat says, Reno 172, and this guy says, lead, and Rat says, Houston Center, Reno 17 flight of 2, request recovery. And this guy, he's still in the lead, but he's just along for the ride. Anyway, we shouldn't have picked on him, I know, but sometimes it just got so boring up there. And you got to admit, it was kind of funny. And we got to talk about philosophy then during the debrief. Okay, fine. So then, what I always enjoyed doing during the recovery, often it was just a long descent toward the base. I would tell number 2 to take spacing and then call for a straight ahead rejoin. And I did that because we're going downhill. And that was another teachable moment, if you will, because when the student got his normal 30 or 50 knots of overtake, he also needed to take in consideration we're going downhill, and again plan for his throttle management, plan for reducing throttles a little bit earlier than what he'd normally do because we were going downhill. Anyway, we come into the pattern, and like I said, depending on whether we were coming into the overhead or doing a formation landing, would dictate what how we set up for the approach. I forgot to mention that throughout the formation flight, the lead had the responsibility for ensuring that all the required checks were done. The climb check, level off check, may have been climb level off. Anyway, descent check and so forth. And then come into the pattern, and once lead pitched out for the landing, then the aircraft was more or less on their own. I always said, okay, if we get split up in a pattern because of traffic conflicts or whatever, once you clear the runway, you wait for number 2 and taxi in with your wingman. And that, again, it was to instill the idea of discipline and integrity. And then we come back in, shut down, catch up on the van, and debriefing kind of went like normal. You'd sit there and you'd hit the highlights of the flight. Usually pretty straightforward, and that was about it for the 2-ship part. In the next series, we're going to talk a little bit about 3 and 4-ship. So I think I'm about talked out today. So with that, Bobo, base gear stop. Thanks for stopping in.